and we're there for close to 8 months to a year, and been on plenty of different firefights, plenty of different missions while we're there. And one of the biggest lessons that I've always learned while serving was complacency kills. So it was always at the forefront of our mind to like not get complacent, as anything could happen at any given moment, any given time while you're here.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bolland, and today I welcome Michael W. Allison. Mr. Allison is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, a Purple Heart recipient, and the CEO of the Adversity Academy Leadership Development Company. His journey through the aftermath of 9/11 and the Iraq War, where he led critical missions, shaped his unique approach to leadership under extreme pressure. We're going to learn about that and quite a bit more today on the We're Not Stumped podcast. But Michael, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I get a chance to be with somebody that I've been listening to your podcast and had the opportunity to come on here and share my story to your audience, man. So thank you.
Oh, it's my honor. We always start the podcast with a segment I call In Your Own Words. So I'd personally like to learn more about you. I've done a lot of research already, and I love your story. But I'd like the listeners to learn more about you.
Yeah, definitely, man. For myself, my story is the journey about resilience, transformation, and leadership. As someone that was born in Jamaica, at the age of 8, I came here to the United States, and we faced a good bit of things when we transitioned from Jamaica coming to America. We were homeless from a flood, from a hurricane. And when I got to the United States, I didn't really speak English, so I had to deal with some of the cultural barriers. So I couldn't speak English very well. So my accent was patois. So I dealt with a lot of bullying that was tied to that. And then I grew up in Overtown, Miami, Florida, back in 1988, where this is the projects, this is the ghetto, which is a pretty tough environment. And some of the struggles I just had to see what my mom and dad had to go through and deal with at that particular moment. And then following that, as I transition and I'm starting to get, you know, just understanding what it's like to be an American, understand some of the things that we actually start liking. And one of the things that I liked was art, and I also started liking to play football. I started watching the Miami Dolphins, starting to look at people like Dan Marino, Brian Cox, and I got into football and I started playing, became pretty successful at it in high school, got an opportunity to be offered a scholarship by University of Wisconsin. But unfortunately for me, back-to-back years, I tear my MCL and ACL, and those scholarships got taken away from me. But at the age of 17, I made a decision that was actually life altering, but it was a great one of the greatest decisions I ever made. I joined the United States Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps teaches you so many things. And one of the greatest things that it taught me was discipline, resilience, and just leadership. And what's tied to that was some of those things were leadership under fire. Literally, when you think about it, I had the chance to serve in combat where I survived a VBID car bomb when I was overseas in Iraq. And from that car bomb, obviously, it left me with post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury. And, with that, some of the transitions that came with that was not some of the greatest things for me. I eventually was struggling and couldn't adapt when I transitioned out of the military, led me down the path of a DUI, divorce, and brought me to the brinks of trying to commit suicide because I was dealing with so many different demons that was just affecting me on a day-to-day basis in my personal life and my professional life too as well. But that's when I decided that I wanted to change my life and I wanted to go on the path of helping myself before I could start pointing to other people and start helping other people too as well. And that's when I started diving into my faith, started diving into my personal development, professional development, my leadership skills, and started to bolstering some of those things so I could become a better person. And doing some of those things, I was able to pick myself up and get myself back on my feet and took myself back to school, got my degree, went back into the workforce, became pretty successful in the workforce. And then I said I wanted to start empowering other peoples too as well. So that's when I decided to write my book. And from there, it transitioned to me doing a TED Talk, and from doing the TED Talk led to me creating my company, the Adversity Academy, where now we're empowering people, empowering organizations, and just teaching them some of the concepts, some of the things that I've learned through the training, my personal experience, some of the things that I've had to go through in regards to working with different organizations and companies so we could start helping people start getting out of the space of just trying to survive, but more so into the thriving aspects of things too as well.
You had mentioned something about early on in your life, and it may transfer to what you're doing at your academy, but going to school a little bit different, talking a little bit different than getting bullied. Is there, because that's something that happens within the limb loss community as well, especially early on if you're congenital or born that way or maybe lost it. What are some of the lessons that maybe you learned about being bullied, and how did you go through that? And what do you recommend others, if you can make a recommendation that others may go through that can help them?
Yeah, definitely. Being bullied is something that is totally unacceptable for anyone, whether you're a child or an adult. And for myself, I really didn't understand that because I came out of a space where speaking the language that I spoke was the actual norm. So I thought I was in my comfort zone and I was in my own space amongst my peers, amongst my family members, where this was accepted. And once I came to America, I spoke patois, so my language was more so like, "Hey, wagwan, I come from Jamaica," and people didn't really understand that. And I was placed into an environment which I had no control over, and it was more so around American demographics, the Hispanic demographics, and the Creole demographics, and trying to integrate yourself with that. And you're a kid, so you're trying to make friends and you're trying to do some of those things was very hard. And in regards to like just being accepted is more so like you were an outcast, and that led to a whole bunch of fear, a lot of grief, a lot of guilt, and just a lot of doubt about yourself. And that's not a really good, comfortable feeling. And that's something that I had to start learning how to deal with at a young age. And initially was not great. It led to lots of fighting, a lots of questioning things about myself, a lots of anger, things being built up, which I kind of tie into some of the things that I do now today in regards to like we had to break the bottle. And I was someone that was bottling things up on the inside. And for me, I had to really truly identify my identity and starting to actually truly know who I am and be proud of the person that I am and actually start loving myself and be confident within the self, within myself in regards to not trying to appease to anybody else, but more so being confident within myself and things that makes me who I am and makes me uniquely who I am, because all of us are unique and beautiful in who we are. And when we could get into that mindset and get into that space and start going through that, that's when we could start transitioning of worrying about some of these things in regards to being bullied and thinking that some of these things that people are doing to us is actually acceptable.
Yeah, and if we think of chronological order, and thank you for that answer, I completely agree. But going through maybe like an elementary school, early life, then you're in high school, and you have some those injuries. Those are major injuries where things that you thought your path was pretty much set, and then things were taken away from you. So that's just another story that kind of leads you probably to where you're at now. But how did you get through that area, that part of your life, knowing that, man, this isn't going to be my future?
Yeah, man, that was a tough time for me. I was thinking about my life at that particular time, kind of like, whenever you're at the airport and you see that luggage that's left on the belt that's going around and around and around and no one actually picks it up. And I kind of felt like that was my life at that time. It felt like things would be going great, then some things would be going bad. And for me to have these injuries back to back years, it just kind of felt like every single year or every single turn, there's always like something always happening to me. It just felt like I was just like on a losing streak, if you think about it that way. And it sucked because I was one that was working out, doing all the things that I'm being told to do by my coaches and all those things that you see that football player to do. And I'm dedicated. I'm showing up to practice. I'm doing every single thing that I'm supposed to do, that I'm told to do. And why me? Why is this happening to me? And some of these things were unfortunate. And after having those injuries back to back, I had a chance to sit down with my coach, and at that time was Coach Flores, and he was telling me, I don't know why this happened to you, but what I want you to do is start thinking about things rather than getting into the victim mindset in regards to that. Think about what are some of the lessons that you could actually learn from this? What are some of the things that you did learn as a football player? And not everybody makes it in football. And we broke down the statistics of what that actually looks like, and if this is something that you truly want to pursue, then recover from this, learn from this, and actually go out in this world and become a better football player. But if it's not something that you truly want to do, then let's look at some of the things you could actually take from actually playing football and how he could apply some of this into the next career or the next path that you're about to take on. And when we were sitting there and talking about some of these things, then he just started empowering me in regards to like, man, you've done some great things here at this school. You've become one of the leaders on this football team. You're getting offers and opportunities from colleges. Not too many people even get that opportunity. Unfortunately, yes, the scholarship was taken away, but this actually confirms in regards to like your skills and your ability, which kind of like changed my mindset in regards to like, yes, I could actually do this. Yes, I was pretty good. Unfortunately, injuries are part of the game, injuries are part of the sport, and these are some of the things that you had to accept and start dealing with. But from there, I just actually just transitioned into what are some of the things that would make Michael great? And I thought about that. And for me, I was one that always wanted to be a part of a community. I was one that always wanted to be a part of something that was much greater than me. So I think about when I was younger, I wanted to be a part of the Boy Scouts. I did that. I wanted to be a part of the football team. So the next transition for me at that particular time in my life was joining the Marine Corps, which I wanted to be a part of this brotherhood and go and do some great things in this world.
And then you obviously went through a very traumatic experience while you were there. And I had heard or either listened to another podcast or read it about you that it was an IED. Is that what you said it was?
Yeah, it was. We got the word from Captain Venning that it was our time to go to Iraq. And from someone like myself that seen what 9/11 did to us in America, I knew that this was going to be a pretty catastrophic time. Is going to be chaos. It's going to be a whole lot of things that was going to actually take place. So we left from California to Seattle, from Seattle to Canada to Germany, from Germany to Kuwait, and then a convoy from Kuwait all the way into Fallujah, Iraq. And we're there for close to 8 months to a year and been on plenty of different firefights, plenty of different missions while we're there. And one of the biggest lessons that I've always learned while serving was complacency kills. So it was always at the forefront of our mind to like not get complacent, as anything could happen at any given moment, any given time while you're here. And the previous day before this attack, I was out with my unit and we got attacked by some Iraqis and we eventually captured them and we turned them back in. And the next day we came back out getting ready to resupply our unit, which was set up in a 360 perimeter. And I have Castanelli in the back of my tank and I have Lowe, which is my driver. And if you look at the AAVs, which could operate in land and water, on the right side, there's a turret, which is where it sits a little bit above the body of the tank itself, but it also has a weapon system, which is a Mark 19 and a 50 cal, and it has a grenade system in the back. But for myself, my body is from waist up, is you can see it as we're driving. So we're there going counterclockwise, and we're dropping off the supplies to every single tank. That was we're going around holding little small conversations. And as we're coming around to the last vehicle, there is a Humvee, and inside of this Humvee, we have my gunny. He's at the back, and he was smoking a cigarette. We had our doctor on the passenger side, and he was there helping us offload some of the supplies. The gunner was Hernandez, and he was there manning the weapons. And my best friend Solto, he was in the driver's side. And as soon as we pull off, about 5 seconds, I hear the loudest bomb and the loudest explosion I could ever hear in my life, deafening. And as soon as this VBID car bomb goes off, the blast impacted the tank, slammed me down, and knocked me back inside of the tank. Castanelli grabs me, pulls me down, checks on me, wakes me back up, and sees that I have a gash from the shrapnel and injured my shoulder and injured my back. We got out. I'm not even worried about myself. I just know that we were right there where this car bomb took off. And we get out and we see our gunny and we see like this hole. The same Humvee that we just saw is now in a crater. It looks like a massive hole, a pool, and all you see is nothing but dust, smoke, fire. And you can smell metal. You can smell the bomb. You can smell blood. You can smell all of these things in the atmosphere. And Gunny has blood running out of his ears. The doctor, his legs blown off. Hernandez, half of his face is blown off. And my best friend Soto, someone that we've been hanging out while we're there. We're working together. We're watching bootleg DVDs, listening to music. I go next to him and I see his entire body is on the steering wheel. And man, that put me in a state of shock and disbelief, seeing my best friend, someone that I just was talking with 5 seconds ago. And now they're lifeless and now they're dead. And I had to put them in a body bag. And for years, man, that troubled me because as someone that was going counterclockwise, dropping off these supplies, I've always had this grief. I always had this guilt saying that I could have done something about this because I just came from that direction where that car just came from. This was a 500-pound car bomb in the back of this car, and it just drove up here and killed my best friend.
Yeah, I honestly don't know how you get through something like that. So more power to you. I don't know what else. There's nothing I could say to that. But I take it that those experiences, to a certain extent, still shaped you and kind of where you're at today. Is that true? Is that what keeps you going?
Yeah, definitely, man. When I transitioned, it was not the greatest. I struggled and I kind of bottled up what all of the things that was I was dealing with on the inside for close over 5 years. I never even had the guts or anything to talk about my experiences. And I just bottled all those things in. And it was not until I was working on the railroad and I get a call in the middle of the night and the dispatcher say, "Hey, we have a suicide here in Stockbridge, Georgia, and we need for you to come and take care of this, get your crew off the train, get a new crew on the train, and you have to deal with if the reporters are there, the coroners are there, and handle the situation." So I get there, get the crew off, meet with the reporters, and I had to go over there and see the body. And as soon as I seen this body, it immediately brought me back to my time in Iraq. And after I did all that, I made a report to our senior executives the next morning. And all of a sudden, I just started having like these trickling effects. And I just started having flashbacks, nightmares, and sweats, and whizzing of bullets flying over my ears and things like that. And I was like, I don't know what the hell is going on, but
Mhm.
I know that I needed help. And I took myself to the emergency room. And this is when we started going through the process of, oh, you have PTSD, you have a traumatic brain injury, you have all these things going on that you have not dealt with. You've just been wrestling with them on the inside, just balling those types of things in. But now we really truly need to address them and deal with them. Because in addition to that, I had some childhood trauma things that has occurred to me that I've never actually faced and dealt with. So going through that process, I was dealing with that. And that brought me to the brinks of almost trying to commit suicide and taking my life. And what led to that was I was on my second divorce. And while I was going through that, you know, I'm a person of faith. And it was in that moment where God was speaking to me and a whole bunch of other things were started occurring. Like, this is not going to happen. I took myself on that bridge, had my weapon, tied 50 pounds of weight to my leg to make sure I stayed at the bottom of the bridge. And I just broke down and I just started thinking about my family, started thinking about my son. And one of the biggest things that actually stuck out was those guys that lost their lives. They lost their lives while fighting and defending our country side by side with me over there. And how dare I try to take my own life when those guys lost their lives over there? And that's when I was on this verge of transformation. This is when I was on the verge of, I'm going to work on Michael and fix some of these things, which has led me to be here with you now today to talk about this story. But that's when I said, what is this thing called PTSD? What is this thing called a traumatic brain injury? And that's when I started like doing my research, started doing my diving deep into some of these things that affect myself and other veterans and so many other people that maybe have PTSD. It doesn't have to be through combat, but just so many other things that we ball in on the inside and we choose not to address. And once I decided to get much more vulnerable and transparent, I went off to Rush University to start understanding some of the things that's tied around mental health. Then I went to Emory Hospital to face some of those things too as well and deal with some of those things and work with doctors and clinicians to make sure I understand what's going on with myself and what's going on with some things with other veterans too, so I can help other veterans as well. And from doing that, man, it just took me on a path as I just became much more inquisitive and learning and starting to help people, man. But having myself equipped with some of these tools was one of the things that helped catapult me in regards to my transformation and how I could put some things into my toolbox to become much more resilient and deal with adversity and deal with tough times and tough situations so I never have to be in some of those past situations that I was in before.
Yeah, again, we're talking with Michael W. Allison, and he can be found at michaelwallison.com. You know, I've been on your website and I've watched you speak in some of the videos, and it's just I want to talk about all of that because you've really made it a very successful endeavor and you're helping a lot of people. But you've kind of talked about early on right there. What were the things that kept you going early on? You have your North Star, but sometimes that star can be pretty far away. What were those things that kept you going to make sure you kept going down the path of where you're at right now?
Yeah, the biggest thing that kept me going was my family. I thought about when I was working on a railroad, I actually got laid off. And when I got laid off, my son was born at that time. For me, it was kind of like perfect timing. So I was there to see my son being born. And that's one of the greatest things as a dad, as a parent, is to actually get the opportunity to like raise your kid and be there for them. And I've always made that commitment that I'm going to be a part of his life no matter what. That was number one. Number two was I was on my second divorce, and some of those things I had to take accountability for. And I said to myself, I'm going to work as hard as I can to put my family back together. And that's exactly what I did. And going through that process, I was able to remarry my wife, which is a funny story that's tied behind that. But we got divorced and got remarried. And I was able to do that and accomplish that. And now seeing the impact that was tied to the transformation for myself, I started being asked by a lot of people like, "Hey, can you tell me about your story or how did you do this?" And what I started realizing was me sharing my story or some of the stories of my veteran comrades is a lot of people deal with some of the same things that I deal with too. And I started seeing that, oh, there's a true connection with people that are immediately directly connected to me that I was sharing with, that they were not sharing some things that they were balling into as well, especially men or some people or even women that may have had some past trauma that they've had or dealt with or have not faced or dealt with in their lives. And I started realizing that this is this is bigger than me. And I say he's bigger than me, my son. I need to be there for him and take care of him. I need to be there for my wife and take care of my wife. But understanding like now, like the people that I'm in contact with or I'm communicating with, that my story could be an inspiration for them to help them have a pivot in their life, transition in their life, or have a change in their lives too as well.
Yeah, that's gr- absolutely a great story. And one of the things that I wanted to ask too, because it's part inspirational, but there's also the entrepreneurial part that you had to kind of navigate to where you're at now. How difficult was that, or was it easy? I mean, I'm sure you had to learn a lot of things, right? Websites and videos and bookings, and how's that been?
It wasn't easy, but one of the greatest tools and the skills is actually working for someone. I had the opportunity to work for some great companies. So I worked on a railroad and I understood what it was like to work on the railroad. I started off as just a regular employee in the railroad, but then I got laid off. And the senior manager there said, "Hey, I loved you as an employee. I have a position in management for you. Would you want that position?" And I accepted it. So I had a chance to work in management where I was working with close to over 50 vendors on the railroad. I had over 200 employees, and I was responsible for over 200 miles of railroad track at 28 years old. So I had that experience at a very young age. Just if you want to think about the management aspect and the leadership aspect of what it's like to actually run a railroad and run an entire operation with just two people. And then I had the opportunity to go back to school and get my bachelor's degree in information security. Then I got my master's degree in business. And then I got my project management, my Six Sigma, and all of these different skills that I wanted to acquire in regards to what I was trying to aspire to in my life. I got lucky, and from there, I had a chance to go work in Washington, D.C. And at this particular time, I was working downtown Washington, D.C. with all of your senior executives, your president, people, staff, all those things. And I had a chance to see what it's like to actually work in the government and see what are some of the things that are taking place and the impact that I could have. Following that, after about 15 years, I worked in the university and I had a chance to work with our veterans, had a chance to work with our students, and had a chance to work with board of trustee members. And I've acquired so many skills And I've always been the type of person, if I'm capped out somewhere, then it's time for me to move on. And when I took a step back, I realized that I've learned all of these different skills, but I would like to actually put this into entrepreneurship. And I said, what are some of the things that I could do when it comes to entrepreneurship? And I looked at either starting my own company initially or actually understanding what it's like to actually run an organization, run a company. So I started looking into franchising. And franchising is actually not for everybody. There's a lot more to franchising that people make up or think about. So when I looked into franchising, I looked at a company where I could actually pick up a model, pick up a blueprint, and just plug and play. And I did that. I purchased a franchise down here in South Florida. Initially, we didn't start off so great, but I took all of the skills that I've learned when it comes to marketing, startups, your financing, all of these different things that's tied to running an operation. And then some of the skills that I've learned throughout the year when I was serving as a Marine, and me taking all of those skills and just starting to implement some of those things, our business took off. And this was around COVID-19. And our business was designated as one of those essential companies. So this is what was kind of beneficial for us in regards to some of the things that we were doing when it comes to the construction and the painting space and some of the home that actually do for homes here locally, because most people's home and they're looking for things to do inside of their house. And that actually helped catapult our business. After several years and doing that business, I felt like there was a calling on my life. There was a calling for me to do something even greater than this. And I sold the franchise. And after selling the franchise, you know, it was it was a calling for me to actually help people. I know that we were helping people when it comes to like your houses and things that you were doing, but I just felt like I had a greater calling to do something else. And I had that tough conversation with the franchise owner, and I sold the franchise back. But I felt like my calling was to actually use all of the things that has occurred to me in my life and make a bigger impact. And within that time span, I was in the gym one day and I was asking God, like, what is it that you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And it was saying, tell your story, tell your story. So I went to San Antonio, Texas, and I came across a friend of mine named Steve Belber. And I was in a writing session and he was a part of the Writers Guild. And I wrote some of the things that has occurred to me in my life in two chapters. And he was asking me to like expound on that, and I was struggling. I couldn't get past writing two chapters because I honestly never dealt with some of the things that were occurring to me or has occurred to me. So I was not ready to be vulnerable and transparent. So I sat on my story for close to 6 years. And in that moment, I said, let me write my book. And I wrote my book in 3 months, shared it with him. And after writing the book, got so many different reviews, so many people checking it out, and I was asked to do a TED Talk. And after doing the TED Talk, I was asked to, hey, do you have any programs or curriculums or anything that's tied to this? Because we love the concept of overcoming adversity. We love the concept of breaking the bottle. But could you help put this into companies? Could you help people with personal development and professional development? Because I do believe those two things coincide together. And from there, I said, all right, let me see what I could do and who could help me do this. And that's where the birth of the Adversity Academy came from, where we started creating leadership development programs for first line supervisors, middle management, and CEO executives. And then we created the online program that helps you with your personal development too, as well. And from that, all of the skills that I learned from the military, from working with these different organizations, and just actually running that franchise were some of the skills that I gained to actually help start this business, because now I had a good runaway in regards to how to start a business, run a business, and get a business operational at a very faster rate.
And you brought up the Adversity Academy, and I know you talked a little bit about it already, but expand on that a little bit. Talk about more, just everything you have to offer there and some of the success stories.
Yeah, definitely, man. So when I was working at the VA, I had the opportunity to be a government contractor, and I designed and created the leadership development program for our senior executives in Washington, D.C. So I understood what is it that companies and organizations are looking for at different levels. And what I saw was this is something that is actually missing in the corporate space too, as well, because when you think about it, a tech company could actually focus on tech stuff, but they don't focus on leadership development skills. A health company could actually focus on their jobs, but they don't focus on the leadership development skills. So what we decided to do with our company was create leadership development programs utilizing our leadership matrix in regards to developing and building leaders at every single level. So we have three different programs that are in person for leadership development, which are for our frontline supervisors, our middle management, and our senior executives. And this is how we kind of keep things where it's transparent, where things actually help and build upon each other within a company and within our organization. And then following that, we have our assessments. So we come in and we work with organizations and companies with our assessment. We do a 360 deep dive and find blind spots in the areas that we could actually get better at. That's also tied with some of our AI automations that we do have tied in place with our recommendations. And then we have our personal development programs, which are all online programs for personal development, professional development, entrepreneurships, and our programs for our veterans. And this is something that we've seen tremendous amount of success with. We had the opportunity to work with Microsoft. We had the opportunity to work with, back to the railroad industry. We had the opportunity to work with quite a few different medical companies that are in the hospice space. And this is something that we found to be truly beneficial with what we're doing, seeing success from it, because we knew that this was something that was actually missing inside of the corporate space too, as well.
That's that's great. I love how you think about those different levels. And you mentioned the book, and by the way, 3 months to write a book. That I mean, you two-handed people can type fast. That's all I got to say. Now, I'm kidding, I'm kidding about that. But I don't know whether I got the name of the book. I want to make sure we talk about the name of that book.
Yeah, definitely. So my first book that came out was called Overcoming Adversity, Getting Your Life Back on Track. And this book here is pretty much a memoir, but what I wanted to do to help people was incorporate lessons and key takeaways that you could actually implement into your life too as well. So you're not just hearing Michael's story, but if you're someone that's dealing with grief, guilt, fear, all of these different types of things, what are some of the lessons from me that you could actually take away from that, extract from that, and see how you could actually implement some of these things in your life? And the book goes through my entire journey, goes through my entire life from all the way of birth all the way to running my company. So I give you personal development things, business things, and also some professional growth things too, as well as lessons that you could actually take and implement into your life. That was from my first book. From the second book that I'm currently working on now is the book called Break the Bottle, which will be released in April.
Break the bond. I love that title because you'd already mentioned it just in your life, thinking about if things were bottled up and break the bottle. What does that term mean to you?
Yeah, man. The term means so much to me. When I decided that I wanted to be a keynote speaker, I was working with a friend of mine called Anthony Trucks. And while we were there talking, he was like, "Tell me about you, man. Tell me your story." And something that resonated with him that I kept repeating over and over, he was saying that, "Man, you're somebody that really like bottled a whole bunch of things in." And he was saying that it's time for you to break the bottle. And that's where the birth of that actually came from. And when I was talking to him about it, I've bottled in so many things. So when you think about it, we bottle in our grief, doubt, sadness, fear, anxiety, all of these things that we kind of may could look at in a negative connotation. But on the opposite side of that is we bottle in our happiness, our joy, our love, all of these things that we don't show or don't put out there because we bottle in so many things in because we're worried about so many different things and dealing with so many things. And it's not until we actually break the bottle, address some of these things, deal with some of these things for us to actually get the opportunity to shine. So it's tied to how do we shatter some of these limitations that we've either put on ourselves or other people have put on us? How do we get into the mindset and the concept of solutions thinking? So we start asking all of the right questions to actually get to the destination of where we're trying to achieve success in our life, within our business, or within our career. The book is taught through a framework of the 3 Ds, which is decision, direction, and destination. And hopefully people will enjoy this book and have an opportunity where they could actually see true success in their lives too as well.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to have you on. I really like your story and how you explain it. And within the disabled, limb loss, limb difference communities, we're, at the end of the day, and I've had this conversation with others, we're just human. So some of the things you're saying are exactly what's going on within the community of people like me. But there needs to be a way you can break the bottle because unfortunately, there's some people that, they're going through their own journey and they may not be at the point where they're breaking their bottle. So that's why I really, again, wanted you to be on, and I really like that term. as you look forward and everything you have going on, I mean, you got another book coming out. You certainly still have the Adversity Academy going on. What are you looking forward to as you move forward in your life?
I want to touch on one thing real
Please.
quick. As someone in the veteran community, I do a lot of work with kids and I do a lot of work with our veterans. And a lot of my veteran friends are amputees that have either lost their legs in combat or lost their arm in combat. And I do a lot of work with them. And to see them so resilient and now doing things out here in this world as they do not let some of these things that occur to them in combat is one of the greatest things that I love to see. And I love being a part of the journey to support my veteran friends or just anyone in the community of just being an amputee or having a limb loss or anything like that, because now I'm around people that are jumping out of airplanes. I'm now seeing people actually are pushing their wheelchairs and into like competitions. Like I have some of my friends that actually performed in the Olympics, right? So seeing some of these things and knowing that these things are not your limitations and you could actually get out here and do things. Had an opportunity to go to Chicago and work with the organization called Oscar Mike, and you should see these guys. They're like getting after it. So I love the opportunity to work with anyone that have been an amputee or lost a limb or anything like that, and it's near and dear to my heart, especially whenever I know that I have friends that are actually in this space. I know that I have friends that have actually some things out of them. And I love that, man.
Yeah, and this is Michael W. Allison. He can be found at michaelwallison.com. So if you're listening to this and you're in that place where maybe you feel like you're bottled up and want to break it out, limb loss community or not, go to that website and find out more about him. And thank you for that. And by the way, you mentioned Resilient. I'm going to plug one of my old episodes. There is a band called the Resilient, made up of all former Marines and Air Force, I believe. And unfortunately, they've lost some limbs, but they're a band. They've won some awards, and it just you trigger something in my mind when I think about them and the great things they're doing. So what is the next 5 to 10 years look like for you? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, the next 5 years is obviously actually just releasing this book and actually get out here and help people break the bottle, because I feel like this is a movement. I feel like so many of us could actually identify and resonate with this message. So that's something that I'm going to be pushing for the next 5 years. Coming from that is for me to get much more plugged in into our veterans community and our kids that have actually been through trauma. As you know, that is near and dear to my heart. And I would like to actually put together a conference where we could actually put individuals, business owners, and so many people that have been through so many adversities. And if they've been dealing with things that have triggered them or it has hurt them, but help them break the bottle at this particular conference. For me, I believe that adversity is not a dead end. It's just a detour, right? And it's something out here that's greater for you. We all face challenges, but I think resilience, accountability, and leadership are some of the key things that help us overcome some of these challenges. Whether you are rebuilding your life, right, leading a team, or just growing your business, right? The question isn't about how do I avoid adversity, but it's like, how do I grow from this? How do I learn from this? How can I make this a teachable moment? And I think this is the mindset that we all need to embrace, especially when we deal with challenges.
Well, looking forward to your future conference. I'm sure it's going to be a success. Everything you do does that. But Michael, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to be on the We're Not Stumped podcast. I learned a lot today. So thank you for your time to be on.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the We're Not Stumped podcast. I have an ask for everyone that got to this point of the podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe. The reason is simple. These stories need to be shared. It would help it to get out there to the people that really need to hear these stories.